Welcome to Extreme Athletes Uncensored. This is your reality check and home for uncensored, trusted advice and stories from the trailblazers who came before us. Because it takes a strategic village to raise an extreme pro athlete. This is your village. Today, we're going to be talking about positioning. Positioning. What does that even mean? So find out, because without positioning, there is nothing. All right, you guys ready? I'm Marina, your host, mother of two aspiring rock climbers and wife to an extreme athlete. Let's dive into positioning. Positioning is everything. I grew up skiing. We moved from the Soviet Union when I was really young. So my mother grew up around St. Petersburg and she cross-country skied. That was her entire childhood. She loved it. They didn't have downhill skiing where she grew up, but she did grow up loving to ski. When we migrated to the United States, we migrated to New York, right? In New York, there was very little cross-country skiing and downhill is a lot more popular, even if it is northeastern skiing, which can be a little not so great, but it is still a very big sport. So my mother dived into downhill skiing. I used to go with my mom downhill skiing all the time. She needed a friend because my father wasn't in it to do it with. So we used to go several times a year during the winter. And every single time we had like a routine. We would get to wherever the slopes were and she would always hire me first, a private instructor that I would spend an hour or two with that instructor so that I would start to build up my technique and the way I would go. And eventually over the years, she used to send me for like weeks at a time for different trainings. And of course, over the time, because I also became invested into skiing, my parents bought me my own ski equipment and whatnot. And it turned out that my own high school had a ski team. I mean, it was really not super, but the point is it was there. So I joined that ski team and I pretty much followed with what my mother introduced me to. Obviously, she wasn't that committed to it and I wasn't that committed to it. And eventually it stopped. I also, I was not one of those most talented skiers and that's okay. Right. But the point is I skied because I was in that position to ski. You cannot become a skier if you live in the tropics. And this is actually exactly what happened with us. So after I even moved to Colorado to be a ski bunny. Like I really was invested in it. And then I was just like burnt out. I hated the cold. I moved to Southern California and then I moved to the tropics and I love the tropics. But then I really wanted to introduce my kids and my husband, who's Guatemalan, to what I enjoyed, right? They didn't want to go skiing. They wanted to go snowboarding, which was totally cool. And you know what? So I got my kids and my husband and us this amazing package in two different really great resorts in Vermont. And I went by my mother's footsteps, right? When we first arrived there, I made sure to sign my kids up to snowboarding school. And me and my husband took private lessons for snowboarding. I was still with the skiing just because you need that. You need to understand what you're doing. Otherwise, it will not be fun. And it was a week. And my kids, my youngest at that point was 6 and my oldest was 12 or maybe 8 and 14. I can't remember, around those ages. And they took to snowboarding incredibly. Like to the point where the instructors pulled me and my husband aside and they're like, you know what? Your kids have like this talent for snowboarding. We would love to know if it's a possibility for them to move on to a more advanced, but level, but it will be, hanging out much longer in Vermont. And we're like, honestly, we live in Guatemala, and we tried many things like, okay, well, if they try skating or surfing, but we both knew the positioning was not right. If we decided to move ourselves to a place where there was snow, absolutely. My kids would probably flourish. Who knows where their snowboarding careers would have gone. But we weren't able to make that commitment. We weren't able to do that. So positioning is so important. important. You cannot pretend to want to be a surfer. Meanwhile, you live by the Rockies, right? You need to find the sport that works in the place where you're at, because you're going to need to put yourself into it. So be realistic. Be realistic. What are you really going to commit to? Which sport? And remember, positioning is everything. Okay, what about you? Have you guys had any of these issues with different positionings or whatnot? I would love to know more about that. And remember, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review, share it with your friends. And I'm here to help you guys, because it is all about that strategic village. And I want to make sure that you guys have the support you need.